Tuesday, August 3rd, 1943. Dear Kitty. Political news excellent. In Italy, the Fascist Party has been banned. The people are fighting the fascists in many places. Even the army is actually taking part in the battle. Can a country like that wage war against England? We've just had a third air raid. I clenched my teeth together to make myself feel courageous. Mrs. Van Dawn, who has always said, "A terrible end is better than no end at all," is the greatest coward of us all now. She was shaking like a leaf this morning and even burst into tears. When her husband, with whom she has just made it up after a week's squabbling, comforted her, the expression on her face alone almost made me feel sentimental. Mushti has proved that keeping cats has disadvantages as well as advantages. The whole house is full of fleas, and the plague gets worse every day. Mr. Cufuus has scattered yellow powder in every nook and corner, but the fleas don't seem to mind a bit. It's making us all quite nervous. One keeps imagining an itch on one's arms, legs, and various parts of the body, which is why quite a lot of us are doing gymnastics, so as to be able to look at the back of our necks or legs while standing up. Now we're being paid back for not being more supple. We're too stiff to even turn our heads properly. We gave up real gymnastics long ago. Yours, Anne. Wednesday, August 4th, 1943. Dear Kitty. Now that we have been in the secret Annex for over a year, you know something of our lives, but some of it is quite indescribable. There is so much to tell. Everything is so different from ordinary times and from ordinary people's lives. But still, to give you a closer look into our lives, now and again I intend to give you a description of an ordinary today. I'm beginning with the evening and night. 9 o'clock in the evening. The bustle of going to bed in the secret Annex begins, and it is always really quite a business. Chairs are shoved about, beds are pulled down, blankets unfolded, nothing remains where it is during the day. I sleep on the little divan, which is not more 1.5 meters long. So, chairs have to be used to lengthen it. A quilt, sheets, pillows, blankets are all fetched from their remain during the day. One hears terrible creaking in the next room, Margot's concertina, bed being pulled out. Again, divan, blankets, and pillows, everything is done to make the wooden slats a bit more comfortable. It sounds like thunder above, but it is only Mrs. Van Dawn's bed. This is shifted to the window, you see, in order to give Her Majesty in the pink bed jacket fresh air to tickle her dainty nostrils. After Peter's finished, I step into the washing cubicle, where I give myself a thorough wash and general toilet. It occasionally happens, only in the hot weeks or months, that there's a tiny flea floating in the water. Then teeth cleaning, hair curling, manicure, and my cotton wool pads with hydrogen peroxide to bleach black mustache hairs. All this in under half an hour. 9:30. Quickly into dressing gown, soap in one hand, pot tie, hairpins, pants, curlers, and cotton wool in the other. I hurry out of the bathroom, but usually I'm called back once for the various hairs which decorate the wash basin in graceful curves, but which are not approved of by the next person. 10 o'clock. Put up the blackout. Good night. For at least a quarter of an hour there is creaking of beds and a sighing of broken springs, then all is quiet, at least that is if our neighbors upstairs don't quarrel in bed. 11:30. The bathroom door creaks. A narrow strip of light falls into the room. A squeak of shoes, a large coat, even larger than the man inside it. Dussel returns from his night work in Crowler's office. Shuffling on the floor for 10 minutes, crackle of paper, that is the food which has to be stowed away. And a bed is made. Then the form disappears again, and one only hears suspicious noises from the lavatory from time to time. 3 o'clock. I have to get up for a little job in the metal pot under bed, which is on a rubber mat for safety's sake in case of leakage. When this has to take place, I always hold my breath as it clatters into the tin like a brook from a mountain. Then the pot is returned to its place and the figure in the white nightgown, which evokes the same cry from Margot every evening, "Oh, that indecent nightdress," steps back into bed. Then, a certain person ties awake for about a quarter of an hour, listening to the sounds of the night. Firstly, to whether there might not be a burglar downstairs, then to the various beds, above, next door, and in my room, from which one is usually able to make out how the various members of the household are sleeping or how they pass the night in wakefulness. The latter is certainly not pleasant, especially when it concerns a member of the family by the name of Dussel. First, I hear a sound like a fish gasping for breath. This is repeated 9 or 10 times. Then, with much ado and interchanged with little smacking sounds, the lips are moistened, followed by a lengthy twisting and turning in bed and rearranging of pillows. 5 minutes perfect peace, and then the same sequence of events unfolds itself at least 3 times more, after the doctor has soothed himself to sleep again for a little while. It can also happen that we get a bit of shooting in the night, varying between 1 o'clock and 4. I never really realize it, until from habit I am already standing at my bedside. Sometimes I'm so busy dreaming that I'm thinking about French irregular verbs or a quarrel upstairs. It is some time before I begin to realize that guns are firing and that I am still in the room. But it usually happens as described above. I quickly grab a pillow and handkerchief, put on my dressing gown and slippers, and camper to Daddy, like Margot wrote in this birthday poem. The first shot sounds at dead of night. Hush, look. A door creaks open wide. A little girl aids into sight, clasping a pillow to her side. Once landed in the big bed. The worst is over, except if the firing net's very bad. 6:45. TRR are the alarm clock that raises its voice at any hour of the day, if one asks for it and sometimes when one doesn't. Crackping Mrs. Van Dawn has turned it off. Creak Mr. Van Dawn gets up, puts on water, and then full speed to the bathroom. 7:15. The door creaks again. Dussel can go to the bathroom. Once alone, I take down the blackout, and a new day in the secret annex has begun. Yours, Anne. Thursday, August 5th, 1943. Dear Kitty, today I am going to take lunchtime. It is 12:30. The whole mixed crowd breathes again. The warehouse boys have gone home now. Above one can hear the noise of Mrs. Van Dawn's vacuum cleaner on tear beautiful and only carpet. Margot goes with a few books under her arm for her Dutch lesson, for children who make no progress, because that's Dussel's attitude. Pim goes into a corner with his inseparable Dickens to try and find peace somewhere. Mummy hurries upstairs to help the industrious housewife, and I go to the bathroom to tidy it up a bit, and myself at the same time. 1:45. The place is ruling up. First Mr. Van Santen, then Cufuus or Crawler Ellie, and sometimes Meep as well. 1 o'clock. We're all sitting listening to the BBC, seated around the baby wireless. These are the only times when the members of the secret annex do not interrupt each other, because now someone is speaking whom even Mr. Van Dawn can't interrupt. 1:15. Click great share out. Everyone from below gets a cup of soup, and if there is ever a pudding, some of that, as Mr. Van Santen is happy and goes to sit on the divan or lean against the writing table. Newspaper, cup, and usually the cat beside him. If one of the three is missing, he's sure to protest. Cufuus tells us the latest news from town. He is certainly an excellent source of information. Crawler comes helter-skelter upstairs, a short, firm knock on the door, and in he comes, rubbing his hands, according to his mood, in a good temper and talkative, or bad-tempered and quiet. 1:45. Everyone rises from the table and goes about his own business. Margot and Mummy to the dishes. Mr. and Mrs. Van Dawn to their divan. Peter up to the attic. Daddy to the divan downstairs. Dussel to his bed, and Anne to her work. Then follows the most peaceful hour. Everyone is asleep, no one is disturbed. Dussel dreams of lovely food. The expression on his face gives this away, but I don't look long because the time goes so fast, and at 4 o'clock the pedantic doctor is standing, clock in hand, because I'm 1 minute late in clearing the table for him. Yours, Anne. Monday, August 9th, 1943. Dear Kitty, to continue the secret annex daily timetable, I shall now describe the evening meal. Mr. Van Dawn begins. He is first to be served, takes a lot of everything, it is what he likes. Usually talks at the same time, always gives his opinion as the only one worth listening to, and once he has spoken it is irrevocable. Because if anyone dares to question it, then he flares up at so. Oh, He can spit like a cat. I'd rather not argue. I can tell you if you've once tried, you don't try again. He has the best opinion. He knows the most about everything. All right then, he has got brains, but self-satisfaction has reached a high grade with this gentleman. Madam, really, I should remain silent. Some days, especially if there is a bad mood coming on, you can't look at her face. On closer examination, she is the guilty one in all the arguments, not the subject. Oh, no, everyone prefers to remain aloof over that, but one could perhaps call her the kindler. Stirring up trouble, that's fun. Mrs. Frank against Anne, Margot against Daddy doesn't go quite so easily. Met now at table, Mrs. Van Dawn doesn't go short, although she thinks so at times. The tiniest potatoes, the sweetest mouthful, the best of everything, picking over is her system. The others will get their turn, as I have the best. Then talking. Whether anyone is interested, whether they are listening or not, that doesn't seem to matter. I suppose she thinks everyone is interested in what Mrs. Van Dawn says. Coquettish smiles, behaving as if one knew everything, giving everyone a bit of advice and encouragement, that's son to make a good impression. But if you look longer, then the good soon wears off. 1. She is industrious. 2. Gay. 3. A coquette. And, occasionally, pretty. This is Petronella Van Dawn, the third table companion. One doesn't hear much from him. Young Mr. Van Dawn is very quiet and doesn't draw much attention to himself. As for appetite, a Dana 3-Dean vessel, which is never full and after the heartiest meal declares quite calmly that he could have eaten double. Number 4 Margot. Eats like a little mouse and doesn't talk at all. The only things that go down are vegetables and fruit. Spoiled is the Van Dawn's judgment. Not enough fresh air and games, our opinion. Beside her mummy. Good appetite, very talkative. No one has the impression, as Mrs. Van Dawn, this is the housewife. What is the difference? Well, Mrs. Van Dawn does the cooking, and Mummy washes up and polishes. Numbers 6 and 7. I won't say much about Daddy and me. The former is the most unassuming of all at table. He looks first to see if everyone else has something. He needs nothing himself, for the best things are for the children. He is the perfect example, and sitting beside him, the secret Annex's bundle of nerves. Dr. Dussel helps himself, never looks up, eats and doesn't talk. And if one must talk, then for heaven's sake let it be about food. You don't quarrel about it, you only brag. Enormous helpings go down and the word no is never heard, never when the food is good, and not often when it's bad. Trousers wrapping his chest, red coat, black bedroom slippers and horn-rimmed spectacles. That is how one sees him at the little table, always working, alternated only by his afternoon nap, food, and his favorite spot, the lavatory. 3, 4, 5 times a day someone stands impatiently in front of the door and wriggles, hopping from one foot to the other, hardly able to contain himself. Does it disturb him? Not a bit. From 7:15 till 12:30, from 12:30 till 1 o'clock, from 2 till 15:15, from 4 till 15:15, from 6 till 15:15, and from 11:30 until 12. One can make a note of it. These are the regular sitting times. He won't come off or pay any heed to an imploring voice at the door, giving warning of approaching disaster. Number 9 isn't a member of the secret Annex family, but rather a companion in the house and at table. Ellie has a healthy appetite, leaves nothing on her plate, and is not picky and choosy. She is easy to please, and that is just what gives us pleasure. Cheerful and good-tempered, willing and good-natured, these are her characteristics. Yours, Anne. Tuesday, August 10th, 1943. Dear Kitty. New idea. I talk more to myself than to the others at mealtimes, which is to be recommended for 2 reasons. Firstly, because everyone is happy if I don't chatter the whole time, and secondly, I needn't get annoyed about other people's opinions. I don't think my opinions are stupid and the others do, so it is better to keep them to myself. I do just the same if I have to eat something that I simply can't stand. I put my plate in front of me, pretend that it is something delicious, look at it as little as possible, and before I know where I am, it is gone. When I get up in the morning, also a very unpleasant process, I jump out of bed thinking to myself, you'll be back in a second. Go to the window, take down the blackout, sniff at the crack of the window until I feel a bit of fresh air, and I'm awake. The bed is turned down as quickly as possible, and then the temptation is removed. Do you know what Mummy calls this sort of thing? The art of living. That's an odd expression. For the last week we've all been in a bit of a muddle about time, because our dear and beloved Westertorn clock bell has apparently been taken away for war purposes, so that neither by day nor night do we ever know the exact time. I still have some hope that they will think up a substitute, tin, copper, or some such thing, to remind the neighborhood of the clock. Whether I'm upstairs or down, or wherever I am, my feet are the admiration of all, glittering in a pair of, for these days, exceptionally fine shoes. Meep managed to get hold of them secondhand for 27.50 florins, wine-colored suede leather with fairly high wedge heels. I feel as if I'm on stilts and look much taller than I am. Dussel has indirectly endangered our lives. He actually let me bring a forbidden book for him, one which abuses Mussolini and Hitler. On the way she happened to be run into by an SS car. She lost her temper, shouted, "Miserable wretches," and rode on. It is better not to think of what might have happened if she had had to go to their headquarters. Yours, Anne. Wednesday, August 18th, 1943. Dear Kitty. The title for this piece is The Communal Task of the Day, Potato Peeling. One person fetches the newspapers, another the knives, keeping the best for himself, of course, a third potatoes, and the fourth a pan of water. Mr. Dussel begins, does not always scrape well, but scrapes incessantly, glancing right and left. Does everyone do it the way he does? No. And, look here, I take the knife in my hand like this, scrape from the top downwards. No, not like that, like this. I get on better like this, Mr. Dussel, I remark timidly. But still, this is the best way. But I can't take dies from me. Naturally, I don't care a bit, aber I must know for yourself. We scrape on. I look slyly once in my neighbor's direction. He shakes his head thoughtfully once more, over me, I suppose, but is silent. I scrape on again. Now I look to the other side, where Daddy is sitting. For him, scraping potatoes is not just a little odd job, but a piece of precision work. When he reads, he has a deep wrinkle at the back of his head, but if he helps prepare potatoes, beans, or any other vegetables, then it seems as if nothing else penetrates. Then he has on his potato face, and he would never hand over an imperfectly scraped potato. It's out of the question when he makes that face. I work on again and then just look up for a second. I know it already. Mrs. Van Dawn is trying to attract Dussel's attention. First, she looks in his direction and Dussel appears not to notice anything. Then she winks an eye. Dussel works on. Then she laughs. Dussel doesn't look up. Then Mummy laughs too. Dussel takes no notice. Mrs. Van Dawn has not achieved anything, so she has to think of something else. A pause and then, Putty, do put on an apron. Tomorrow I shall have to get all the spots out of your suit. I'm not getting myself dirty. Another moment's silence. Putty, why don't you sit down? I'm comfortable standing up and prefer it. Pause. Putty, look, du spatzt schon. You are making a mess. Yes, Mammy, I'm being careful. Mrs. Van Dawn searches for another subject. I say, Putty, why aren't there any English air raids now? Because the weather is bad, Curly. But it was lovely yesterday, and they didn't fly then either. Let's not talk about it. Why? Surely one can talk about it or give one's opinion. Why ever not? Do be quiet, Mammychen. Mr. Frank always answers his wife, doesn't he? Mr. Van Dawn wrestles with himself. This is his tender spot. It's something he can't take, and Mrs. Van Dawn begins again. The invasion seems as if it will never come. Mr. Van Dawn goes white. When Mrs. Van Dawn sees this, she turns red, but goes on again. The British do nothing. The bomb explodes. And now hold your tongue, Donnerwetter noch einmal. Mummy can hardly hold back her laughter. I look straight in front of me. This sort of thing happens nearly every day, unless they've just had a very bad quarrel, because then they both keep their mouths shut. I have to go up to the attic to fetch some potatoes. Peter is busy there delousing the cat. He looks up. The cat notices. Poppy has disappeared through the open window into the gutter. Peter swears. I laugh and disappear. Yours, Anne. Friday, August 20th, 1943. Dear Kitty. The men in the warehouse go home sharp at 5:30 and then we are free. 5:30. Ellie comes to give us our evening freedom. Immediately we begin to make some headway with our work. First, I go upstairs with Ellie, where she usually begins by having a bit from our second course. Before Ellie is seated, Mrs. Van Dawn begins thinking of things she wants. It soon comes out, "Oh, Ellie, I have only one little wish." Ellie winks at me. Whoever comes upstairs, Mrs. Van Dawn never misses a single opportunity of letting them know what she wants. That must be one of the reasons why none of them like coming upstairs. 5:45. Ellie departs. I go 2 floors down to have a look around. First to the kitchen, then to the private office, after that the coal hole, to open the trap door for Mushji. After a long tour of inspection, I land up in Crowler's room. Van Dawn is looking in all the drawers and portfolios to find the day's post. Peter is fetching the warehouse key and Bosch, Pim is hauling the typewriters upstairs. Margot is looking for a quiet spot to do her office work. Mrs. Van Dawn puts a kettle on the gas ring. Mummy is coming downstairs with a pan of potatoes. Each one knows his own job. Peter soon returns from the warehouse. The first question is bread. This is always put in the kitchen cupboard by the ladies, but it is not there. Forgotten? Peter offers to look in the main office. He crouches in front of the door to make himself as small as possible and crawls towards the steel lockers on hands and knees so as not to be seen from outside, gets the bread, which had been put there, and disappears. At least, he wants to disappear. But before he quite realizes what has happened, Mushji has jumped over him and gone and sat right under the writing table. Peter looks all around. He sees him there. He crawls into the office again and pulls the animal by its tail. Mushji spits. Peter sighs. What has he achieved? Now Mushji is sitting right up by the window cleaning himself, very pleased to have escaped Peter. Now Peter is holding a piece of bread under the cat's nose as a last decoy. Mushji will not be tempted and the door closes. I stood and watched it all through the crack of the door. We work on. Rat, tat, tat. 3 taps means a meal. Yours, Anne. Monday, August 23rd, 1943. Dear Kitty. Continuation of the secret Annex daily timetable. As the clock strikes 8:30 in the morning, Margot and Mummy are jittery. SSH. Daddy, quiet. Otto, SSH. Pim. It is 8:30. Come back here. You can't run any more water. Walk quietly. These are the various cries to Daddy in the bathroom. As the clock strikes 8:30, he has to be in the living room. Not a drop of water, no lavatory, no walking about. Everything quiet. As long as none of the office staff are there, everything can be heard in the warehouse. The door is opened upstairs at 8:20, and shortly after there are 3 taps on the floor. Anne's porridge. I climb upstairs and fetch my puppy dog plate. Down in my room again. Everything goes at terrific speed. Do my hair. Put away my noisy tin pot tie. Bed in place. Hush! The clock strikes. Upstairs, Mrs. Van Dawn has changed her shoes and is shuffling about in bedroom slippers. Mr. Van Dawn, too. All is quiet. Now we have a little bit of real family life. I want to read or work, Margot as well, also Daddy and Mummy. Daddy is sitting, with Dickens and the dictionary, naturally, on the edge of the sagging, squeaky bed, where there aren't even any decent mattresses. 2 bolsters on top of each other will also serve the purpose. Then he thinks, mustn't have them. Then I'll manage without. Once he is reading, he doesn't look up, or about him, laughs every now and then, takes awful trouble to get Mummy interested in a little story. Answer, I haven't got time now. Looks disappointed for just a second, then reads on again. A little later, when he comes to something extra amusing, he tries it again. You must read this, Mummy. Mummy sits on the opklap bed, Dutch type of bed, which folds against the wall to look like a bookcase with curtains hanging before it, reads, sews, knits, or works, whatever she feels like. She suddenly thinks of something. Just says it quickly, and, do you know? Margot just jot down. After a while, peace returns once more. Margot closes her book with a clap. Daddy raises his eyebrows into a funny curve, his reading wrinkle deepens again, and he is lost in his book once more. Mummy begins to chatter with Margot. I become curious and listen too. Pim is drawn into the discussion. 9 o'clock. Breakfast. Yours, Anne.